Welcome back to week 4 of the head coach episode. I'm here with Yanni.
What's up, buddy?
Full disclosure to the fans, usually we record this on Wednesday night. This weekend we had weird schedules. This is going to be on Tuesday night. So we're missing about 24 hours of injury news. If you watch this, just understand we're 24 hours of injury news behind. Make sure to check your fantasy lineups or whatever if you have guys that you're questioning whether or not they can go. But without further ado, let's get into the game breakdowns.
Okay. First game of the week. I actually think it's going to be a sneaky, really good game. Cowboys implied team total 25.5, going to the Giants with an implied team total of 20. The Giants, my new second string team as of this week. I am a second string fan of the Giants. I will be rooting for them anytime they're not playing the Niners and anytime they don't mess with the Niners' interest. And this week, if they could beat the Cowboys, that actually helps out a little bit. For the Cowboys, defense has been garbage, but you do have your big offensive players there. You have Prescott, Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb. Look, Jake Ferguson is, in my opinion, creeping toward a premium fantasy asset, and at least not in terms of general market value, but in terms of the tight end market. He's sort of in most people's mid tight end one range. Let's see how much higher he gets this year. But he's getting fed targets, man. He's a weekly start. CD, obviously. We're going to sit Zeke's. We're going to sit Cooks. Pretty straightforward. Zeke is dust. He's dropping off. And Dowdle finally had like a 12 or 13 touch game. I think he had 5 or 6 targets, like 10 or 12 carries, something like that last week. Dowdle is clearly the most talented back there. We're kind of looking for this to be the week he breaks out maybe a little bit, gets a little bit more run, stays in there with the ones, maybe gets a goal line touch or two. We'll see. That might not be something Dallas is going to do. Ted's pretty insistent. They just don't want to run the ball as possible. But we're going to keep an eye on Dowdle this week. He's a tricky decision. And like DFS, if you want to throw him out there, throw him out there. See what happens. It's a plus matchup. Giants, neighbors, Singletary, and then the surprise one this week is Danny Dimes. We are going to start Danny Dimes against the Cowboys. Yeah, their defense is playing like trash. Playing like trash. You should have negative game scripts all day. Neighbors looks like the second coming of Odell Beckham Jr. Singletary has been playing really good football. The offense had its best week last week against what most consider to be a top 12 defense. Get them out there. And then your tricky decision, Wan'Dale Robinson, probably more of a full PPR 12 to 16 team play or a DFS play. Robinson, however, is seeing an extremely healthy target share. He's seeing like between a lower end of 20%, higher end of 30% target share every game this year from them. And he's getting enough catches that it does make him at least someone worth a look.
Yeah, fair points, all of them. I guess my main note on this game is I think that the Cowboys are becoming a team, at least to me. We'll see how it looks on Thursday, but I think they're starting to be a very predictable team in what they are wanting to do and what they're good at, right? So this Cowboys rush defense is not very good, and you can run at them. They're small, and as a result, right, like if teams can get up on them big, like the Ravens do, that's kind of where they get snowballed on. I would just caution Cowboys fans, or I guess Cowboys fantasy bag holders, temper expectations on Dowdle. He's definitely the guy to own on this team, but yeah, to Yanni's point, I don't believe this Cowboys team has any interest in establishing the run or even running the ball. But I think he's the guy to own. And then for your Giants guys that you're starting, I would just caution you that if the Cowboys can build a quick lead on this Giants team and they're able to just like kind of tee off and pass rush, it might be a hard week for the guys. We're recommending them is starts, dimes, and neighbors, and even putting Wandale as a tricky decision based on the projection of what we've seen from dimes the past couple of weeks. He has actually come alive with neighbors there, but just proceed with caution. Don't get too overzealous with dimes. If he's like a QB2, you're not sitting like Jordan Love for him, for example. But
No.
in theory, the matchup is good. In theory, the Giants should keep it close. We'll see what happens though. All right, next one. I got actually my second team in here, the Carolina Panthers. Funny how the slides worked out this week. But we got the Bengals going into Carolina to play the Panthers. The Bengals have an implied team total of 26.5 points. The Panthers have an implied team total of 22 points. For the Bengals, we are starting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Zach Moss. We're sitting the three-headed monster in the Bengals tight end room and Chase Brown. And we're tricky decisioning T. Higgins and Andre Yoshibas. Then for the Panthers, we are starting the Red Rifle. We're starting Deontay Johnson and we're starting Chuba Hubbard. we are sitting Miles Sanders, and we're tricky decisioning Xavier Legette. So we'll start on the Bengals side here. I think they're probably the most surprising 0-3 team in football. I would say out of like the Jaguars and I forgot who else, but this Bengals team probably shouldn't be 0-3, and things are feeling a little bit weird for them. They had a good offensive performance against the Redskins on Monday night, so we're feeling more comfortable with Burrow and Chase. And Zach Moss is, he's not sexy. He's not an elite running back, but he's getting the primary run here. We're projecting this Panthers team is going to give up a lot of points, so he's going to be in there for that reason. Notable for the tricky decisions, T. Higgins. I know a lot of fantasy managers, they drafted him not super high, but decently high, probably like sixth, seventh round, maybe even the fifth round, depending on what your league was. And it didn't look bad on Monday. We're just cautioning people, and we're putting him in the tricky decision just because, like, there's still some questions about his health. He didn't look that great. In fact, I think Yoshi Boss might have had a better fantasy outing than him on Monday. It's just kind of weird with him. We'd like to see more. I wouldn't feel great having him on my roster. He would be someone I'd try and move, but I don't think you're going to get much for him right now. And Yoshi Boss, I mean, we kind of mentioned this on the free agent episode, but he's kind of coming into his own. He's becoming a relevant piece of the offense, getting some more looks. It's enough in a plus matchup to throw him his tricky decision. Then for the Panthers side, this is just, these are the guys who did it for you last week. Dalton, DJ, and Hubbard were all studs. If you had them in your lineup, you were really happy about it the previous week. And the Panthers had fixed their Bryce Young problem. This Bengals defense, they did not get the Redskins to punt once on Monday. It's a very gettable defense. I mean, I don't see the Panthers really struggling here, and you have the Andy Dalton revenge game. I think there could be a lot of points in this one. We're sitting Miles Sanders. He got some run, but no, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I think he's more of a change of pace guy than having like a legitimate role in the backfield. Then tricky decision, Xavier Legette. With Adam Thielen being out, he is projected to be starting in two wide receiver sets. We like the matchup, passing on the Bengals, so we're feeling good enough to put Legette as a tricky decision. Any thoughts on this one, Yanni?
Just two of the rookies that I'm keeping an eye on. Eric All Jr. actually leads all tight ends in targets per route run. That means when he runs a route, Joe Burrow's looking for him and he's getting open enough to warrant a target more so than any other tight end in football. If he gets a drastic increase in his snap count or snap share, might be kind of interesting. Right now, it's just a mess, though. I wouldn't even really bother. People are saying to roster him. I mean, maybe it's very speculative, though, but I am keeping an eye on it this week. And then Legette. Legette had a couple flashy plays last week. In college, he was sort of a home run hitter. He's a really interesting guy, super athletic. And he has the arm to get him the ball. And Adam Thielen just went on IR. It's maybe not the worst call before the game if you want to speculatively stash Legette if he survives off waivers this week. I would maybe think about doing that. There's a really good track record of first-round wide receivers. I don't know if he went pick 32 or like pick 33, 34, but he's basically a first-round receiver. I believe he did go in the first round, actually. Just keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on him. If those two rookies do well, you probably want to get him on your roster. And then Yosibas if he keeps up for a third week. Okay, what probably will not be a barn burner, Broncos at the Jets. 15.5 implied team total for the Broncos, 23 for the Jets. Broncos are a really boring discussion at this point right now. You sort of have Jaleel got the touchdown last week. Javonte got the touches the week before. We don't really know what's going on with the backfield in terms of reliable startability. I'm not touching either one of them. I dropped Jaleel in a lot of leagues, and I loved him coming into this year. I had 60% roster exposure to him coming into this year, and I'm out on it. It's too much of a mess. For that reason, we're sitting Bo Nix, we're sitting the running backs, we're sitting Marvin Mims, who for some reason is still a thing in the fantasy community. Sutton, who's had a really slow start to the year, did finally have an 11-target game. That's sort of what you were looking for when you drafted him, 11 targets. He draws the sauce matchup this week. Unless your roster's particularly banged up, I hope you're not in a position where you have to start him, but some people will, so he's going to be our sort of tricky decision on the Broncos. I don't know what you're really expecting with a 15.5 implied team total in the Sauce Gardner matchup, though. I think it's going to be a long day for Broncos weapons. For the Jets, you're starting your big two, Hall and Wilson. Temper expectations for Hall just a little bit. He draws Surtain. Sertain's an excellent cornerback, one of the best in football. He has caused problem. I mean, he just blanked Mike Evans last week, but that does correlate to one of our other calls. Rodgers, now low game total. I don't know for most rosters if you're starting him. He's one of those QB2s, though, that's been productive this year, coming off his best game of the season in fantasy last week. It just depends on what your roster's looking like, whether or not you want to start him. But because we're assuming Surtain plays Wilson really well, I take a look at Conklin or Lazard this week, probably more so in DFS. I would be pretty surprised if your roster, unless it's a 14 or a 16 team league, is starting either of these guys. But I don't know with how banged up tight ends are. If you want to throw Conklin in there and hope he recreates the week before, it's not the worst call.
Question from the peanut gallery. Are we taking any stock into the Broncos' performance against the Bucks last week, or are we just calling that a weird one-off and we still want nothing to do with this offense?
I don't think it's like nothing to do with the offense. I think it's more it's a really bad matchup this week. Look, I think they showed enough life that they're like an interesting matchup and good matchups now. Maybe you'd be rolling out Javonta and Sutton if it's a good matchup. If Bo Nix goes out there and does that against the Jets, so like if he slaps around the Bucks and the Jets back-to-back week, then it looks like he's taken a serious turn in his development and their offense is better. For now, though, I mean, what would you comfortably put Jaleel or Javonta in any of your lineups?
Not comfortably in the lineups. I would feel okay having Javonte as a bench stash.
It's
Jaleel,
a
if you
bench.
can afford it, bench stash. And I think that my read on it is that the Broncos just caught the Bucks when they were injured. Like it was a weird week. But yeah, like you said, if they can have some success here against the Jets, I think we're
Yeah,
looking at the Broncos at least offensive pieces being somewhat alive. From because I mean like before, right? We've had them as a like no one. We want no one on this team
yeah,
slide. So
yeah. They're alive. They're alive, dude. Sutton's on waivers in a lot of my leagues. Like Sutton's on waivers. I saw Jaleel's on almost every waiver. I haven't seen anyone starting Javonta, so we'll see.
they really just go as Bo Nix goes, right? And it's like I haven't. I don't know. There's been a lot of Sean Payton slander. I still have faith that he's a good coach. It's just,
It's
the Russell Wilson trade just totally drained their team of talent, and they're trying to build the pieces here. I don't know if it's time for Bo Nix yet, but be encouraged if you see it this week, because then we'll have a lot more things to talk about in fantasy, right? It's more fun for me personally when you don't have just these total dud offenses you want no pieces of.
yep.
At any rate, we got the next game. We got the Saints going into Atlanta to play the Falcons. The Saints have an implied team total of 20.5 points, and the Falcons have an implied team total of 22 points. For the Saints, we're keeping it simple. We're just starting Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara, and we're sitting Derek Carr and Rashid Shaheed. More on that in a minute. And for the Falcons, we are starting the big three: Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. We don't have any blatant sits for you, and we're tricky decisioning Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney. So we'll start on the Saints side here. A little bit of a crash back to reality on Sunday against the Eagles. They had a tough time getting anything going, and we saw a classic Carr. We saw a classic Carr at that in the game-losing interception. It's just, we were kind of waiting for him to turn back into a pumpkin. Guess what? He's still a pumpkin. I mean, I'm still encouraged by Clint Kubiak. I don't think that you write the Saints off entirely and their offense off entirely. I think that there is going to be some marketable improvement over the season. But this Falcons defense at the same time is very good, especially in the secondary. They limited Mahomes and the Chiefs pretty well. They kept the defense basically single-handedly kept them in the game against the Eagles, who were kind of smacking them around. This is a good defense, and that's why we're sitting Rashid Shaheed. Don't drop him or anything. Rashid Shaheed is actually getting like starting player looks. It's not like before I kind of had him in like the Marvin Mims class of player that just doesn't get that many snaps, but he can score a long touchdown. Now he's like getting regular usage. Just we want him on the pine this week, but still a good player for your fantasy roster. I'd love to have a Rashid Shaheed roster. I missed out on it. For the Falcons, I mean, we've seen improvement over the past 2 weeks. I think that Bijan is a no-brainer. Kyle Pitts, given the tight end position, is a no-brainer. And Drake London, he started to come alive a little bit the past couple weeks. He still hasn't been the player that you've been drafting, but I mean, he's been showing enough to still be a no-brainer start. I don't see a reason you would sit him. I think the more interesting conversation is probably with Cousins and Mooney. Cousins has looked better the past couple of weeks. He's actually taking snaps from under center. He's had drives where he's moved the ball effectively against both the Eagles and the Chiefs. Chiefs are a good defense. The Eagles, I don't think so anymore. But I mean, we've seen signs of life from him. I think you still have to kind of factor in that he's recovering, right? He's recovering. He's still shaking off the rust. And the Saints defense is a good defense, especially if they can get pressure on him. I don't see him having success getting off his spot, being able to extend plays. I almost lean towards a sit on him, but we put him as a tricky decision out of respect for what we've seen the past couple weeks. Then Darnell Mooney, apparently he just can't get it done as a wide receiver at one, but when he's designed to be the second wide receiver in an offense, he's great. He shouldn't be on any waivers at this point. If you have Darnell Mooney on your waivers, go get him now. This is just a tough matchup. I would not be shocked to see Darnell Mooney in the start going forward in future weeks. Do you have anything to add on to this one, Yanni?
No, I mean, I'm a big Mooney guy. Happy to see him on the list. And I think Bijan's one of the best buy lows in football right now. So,
Yeah.
no. I would say that this game, though, will be interesting to see with all the injured Falcons linemen. Their O line played like shit once those guys went out. And I just wonder. I wonder if they're going to start to have some problems without two starting linemen.
Yeah. Kirk was
I
getting
didn't
mauled
the
against the
length of the
Chiefs.
injuries, but that's what I would keep an eye on. I'm just a little bit worried about their interior line.
No.
Okay, Vikings at Packers. Really interesting game to see which team's elite. The player that leads the league in rush yards per attempt and pass yards per attempt is Malik Willis as of right now. Kind of interesting, right? Looks like Jordan Love is practicing this week. Should be back. Vikings 20.5 implied team total. Packers 23 at Green Bay. For the Vikings, JJ and AJ weekly starts. We'll see how long Aaron Jones stays healthy. I hope he does. I actually am really a fan of the player. The question for me is always his health. It's never his talent. He's been going off the first few weeks. You have to feel really good if you're an Aaron Jones drafter. You are going to sit, though, Naylor and Addison. Just a tough defensive matchup. I could see it being pretty grindy. And then your tricky decision is going to be Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's been on fire to start the year here so far, but this secondary is really, really good. McKinney's really good. Jair's been playing really well. The defense as a whole has been getting a lot of pressures. The Packers are one of the top-rated defenses in the NFL right now. Now, so is Minnesota. But I do expect Sam Darnold to maybe see a little bit more of the old Sam Darnold, a little bit of regression towards his average as a player. But he's been so prolific, and the offense has been so good. A lot of rosters are probably going to be starting him this week. And then for the Packers, Love is back. You're going to roll out Love. You're going to roll out Reed. You're going to roll out Jacobs. Expect probably like a 10 to 15% down week from Love ceiling this week. He did have the knee injury. Normally it takes 2 to 3 weeks, even after return to play, to be totally healthy for the MCL. Tucker Kraft, he's running a lot of routes. He's not productive yet. Maybe that changes with Love, but for now we're going to sit him. Tricky decisions, more so DFS dart throws for this week. You can get some run out of Watson or Dobbs in DFS. I probably will be making a Christian Watson roster if Love is back this week. That safety, McKinney over the top, is going to limit those deep bombs. Watson had like 3 targets for 67 yards on 2 catches last week. I'm sticking by my take. It's been my read all year. I went all in, 40% roster share. I am a little biased. I think when Love is back, Watson will be at the worst case scenario of flex, best case scenario of mid-range wide receiver 2. So I think you can get him at a really cheap price this week. And then Dobbs is just sort of consistent. Full PPR, DFS. He's going to get his touches. Clearly, both quarterbacks like throwing to him. So he's kind of a weekly sort of tricky decision. That's kind of where he lives, in that range. And then Wicks is just simply not relevant. Fantasy community was trying to get too fancy and too interesting, thinking they knew everything by drafting him heavy this year. That's what I got.
Yeah, this was an interesting one for me. Full disclosure, I think that both of these teams are very overrated personally. I think that everyone is just everyone's really excited about this Vikings team. I'm not there. I'm not there. I think Justin Jefferson's a great player. I think Sam Darnold is doing what he needs to do right now, but I'm not buying this Vikings team long term as actual contenders. And to the Packers as well. I guess specifically to the defense, I would counter Yanni's they're a good defense argument with they also played Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, who are two of the most struggling quarterbacks in the league right now. So I think it's somewhere in between. I don't think they're a bad defense, but I mean the Eagles lit them up. The Eagles lit them up week one. Um, Exciting news for the Packers, at least, right? It appears as if we're getting Jordan Love back. That should kind of keep, or I guess resurrect the pass catchers. I know Malik Willis did well. Malik Willis filled in better than I ever thought he would as a backup for this team, but he's Jordan Love is a different level than Malik Willis. Let's just be real here. So we'll see. You know, it should be an interesting game. I think that Wicks isn't entirely off the table with Love, but we'll see. I would still leave him on waivers. I guess that's really all I have for this game. I guess my only other comment on the Vikings side is Ty Chandler must be rostered if you're in a league. I mean, Aaron Jones has looked good, but if this Vikings team is legitimate, I personally don't think they are, but if they are legitimate and Aaron Jones goes down for any reason whatsoever, it looks like Ty Chandler's backfield. All right, next we got the reeling Jacksonville Jaguars going into Houston to play the Texans, who are also coming off a tough one. The Jaguars have an implied team total of 19.25 points, and the Texans have an implied team total of 26.25 points. For the Jaguars, we are starting Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne. We are sitting Tank Bigsby, Gabe Davis, and Trevor Lawrence, and we are tricky decisioning Brian Thomas Jr. And for the Texans, we have the usual suspects as start CJ, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and whatever running back is going to be out there. And we're tricky decisioning Dalton Schultz. Let's start on the Texan side first this time because I think this one is easier for me. The Jaguars, they are not what they once were defensively. They just got their teeth kicked in by the Bills on Monday night. This Texans team, I think, is much closer to the Bills than they are the Jaguars. This is your classic smash spot. I love everyone here. Tank Dell has an asterisk next to his name because there is some injury concern. If he cannot go this week, it just boosts Collins and Diggs like up my rankings. Diggs right
Yeah.
now, like he's kind of I think ECR has him as like around a low wide receiver too. Like he goes top 20, top 15 to me if Dell misses time. Texans running back. I mean, Cam Akers, it was not an inspired performance against Minnesota, but we are calling the Jaguars a good matchup now. We're calling the Jaguars a plus fantasy matchup, so feel good about rolling out whoever. And for the Jaguars, I think we learned something about this team on Monday. I think we learned that in the words of John Middlecoff, Trevor Lawrence is a high character Deshaun Watson at this point. He
Oh,
is missing so
that's
many
horrible.
throws. That's brutal, isn't it?
When
Like,
he said that, I went, "Oh my God, he's right."
yeah, yeah, dude, it's bad right now for Jacksonville. It's whatever they have going on is not working. I heard fire Doug Peterson at the beginning of the season. I thought that was an overreaction. I get it now. I get it. This team has not won a game since like October or November of the previous year. They're reeling. They're just looking for anything that works here. That's why we have Christian Kirk as a start because he actually got a lot of volume in the second half against the Bills. Against the Bills, obviously the Bills were kind of the foot was off the gas at that point, right? The game was already over by halftime. But I think this Jaguars team is going to be desperately looking for something that works, and getting Christian Kirk the ball at least worked in some capacity. So that's why we feel good rolling him out. It should. I would be shocked if this is not a negative game script for Jacksonville, and they should be passing the ball a lot. We're kind of planting our flag on ETN and Bigsby. I mean, Bigsby got some run week one. I believe he split carries with ETN. There was the fumble at the goal line ETN had. We think it's more of that than it is Bigsby actually being in a timeshare here. ETN has started out slow. I mean, the Jaguars, it doesn't help the Jaguars as a team have been a mess. We think it'll get better. ETN still starting with confidence, even though this isn't a great matchup. And then Brian Thomas Jr. tricky decision. I love the kid. I in most weeks I would have him as a start, but he is drawing the Derek Stingley matchup. Then Trevor, I mean, we already buried the kid. We don't need to do it anymore until further notice. Until further notice, I would not take him off your bench. He's got to figure it out. It's one of the weirdest situations in football right now. I would say, to me, it's one of the top storylines of the year. Like, what happened to this guy, because like I don't know, he was never like a polished product to me, but like the narrative on this guy has just changed over the past, I don't know, 10, 11 weeks of football. He's just not the same guy anymore. I don't know if it's a confidence issue. I don't know if it's like just him as a football player issue, but they got to figure it out, man. It's brutal out there. Do you have anything you want to add on, Yanni?
Trevor Lawrence makes $54 million a year more than Brock Purdy, which is pretty incredible. No, and then yeah, I mean, we went back and forth a little bit about Brian Thomas and Kirk. I'm way bigger on Brian Thomas. I have no Kirk shares. I have 3 or 4 Brian Thomas shares. And he does seem like he's clearly the team's number one receiver. I just think with the type of defense D'Amico Ryans likes to play, it's going to be Christian Kirk working in between the zones a lot and like coverage rolling over toward Brian Thomas. And I think when you play Trevor Lawrence now, the game plan moving forward is going to be force him to throw a bunch of really good decision throws underneath and like force him to pick apart the zone. Don't give him the big over the top stuff to Brian Thomas. I just think this week's a tough matchup. Generally speaking, though, he's a much more valuable player than Kirk.
Yeah, to be crystal clear, 10 toes down on Brian Thomas
So,
Jr. being the guy
yeah, it's
you
not
want here. Yeah.
not close. It's a specific game thing. Okay, a game I'm actually really looking forward to watching because I think it has some pretty serious implications for a lot of things. And that's going to be the Steelers at the Colts. Steelers 20.5 implied team total. Colts 19-point implied team total. One of the lower ones on the week this week. For the Steelers, really nice concentrated offense. Okay, I know these guys. First of all, neither one has had kind of that sexy game yet. That game, but Pickens and Najee are getting the vast majority of the rushing and receiving work on this team. Air yard share, target share, first read share. It just has not materialized because of their weird game scripts, because Justin Fields, I think, has been easing himself in. I think they've been playing it really safe and letting their defense win them games. That will change coming up here. I mean, they're going to have to open it up as they come along. And I thought Fields had his best game of the year last week. He's been better every week, and he still has not turned the ball over. Najee was in a sling this week, but that was precautionary because he had an AC soreness. I guess you just do that to let your arm chill and heal up. It looks like he's practicing already. And Warren might miss this week. So Najee's kind of as far as Najee can be a smash, he's a smash here. He's not a smash in fantasy. He's a smash relative to Najee. And Pickens is more of like a sneaky little start, I had a tough choice. Deontay Johnson or Pickens this week, Ted, and I know you'll like my choice. I did go Deontay Johnson over Pickens. But a lot of rosters where you're going to start Pickens. And then tricky decision. A little bit of consternation in the old free Tendies fantasy pre-shooting debate. Is Fields a start? Is he a tricky decision? I think they're going to be able to move the ball on the Colts. The Colts can't stop the rush, and I don't know what Fields is averaging in rushes per game, but I believe it's like 11 or 12. I think if he starts running the ball here, there's kind of some sneaky upside there. But I also think they might just turn around and hand it off 42 times this week. So especially if Anthony Richardson turns the ball over, it's not going to be a pass-happy game script. So he's going to be a sort of tricky decision for us. And then for the Colts, really a bummer. I love this team's players. I took a bunch of A.D. Mitchell shares. I took a Pittman share. I took a lot of Jonathan Taylor shares. All you can really say right now is Jonathan Taylor's a smash must start. We're never disputing that, even in a tough matchup. And really, it seems like if these things keep trending the way that they are, Jonathan Taylor is going to be their most effective way to move the ball, and you might see some more of those 25-plus point weeks from them like you saw this week. For that reason, though, we're sitting all the wide receivers. I know Alec Pierce flashed a little bit. I know Pittman was a high draft pick. I know A.D. Mitchell, or a high draft pick in fantasy. I know A.D. Mitchell was a high real-life draft pick. Downs might be back this week. I don't know how you could comfortably start any receiver here. I am starting Christian Watson over Pittman in the league where I have them both. And that roster is really injured. I wish I had better choices between those. I can't start Pittman right now. You just can't do it. 30% target share, it does not matter. And then the wild one is Anthony Richardson, a tricky decision at this point. Absolutely went off week one. He had 12.5 and like 9.7 respectively the last 2 weeks. I don't know. It would depend who else you have on your roster, right? You're almost certainly going to start him, but I don't know. I would start Baker Mayfield at Philadelphia over Anthony Richardson. Um,
Here, let's stay in the
I
game. Would you start Justin Fields or Anthony Richardson?
Justin Fields.
That says all you need it
That's not
to. That says all you need it
that's not
to.
that's not close for me. I would start Justin Fields.
Oh,
Yeah. Dude, Justin Fields isn't even really running right now, and he's 11, 12 points a game. It's nothing cool. It's not amazing, but like he's holding that kind of bottom QB2 floor. If he starts rushing, he'll push into the 16, 18 points a game. We'll see.
I mean, he had like,
I'm
what
biased.
was it, like 15 carries week one? Like, he's doing, Fields is doing what he needs to do right now for the Steelers team, right? Like, they're 3-0, and it's largely on the back of their defense, right? Like, the Steelers are 3-0, and they scored 3 total touchdowns all year. That says all you needed
Yeah.
to say about how their defense has performed so far. I mean, in terms of the Pickens Najee callouts for starts, I agree with both of them. This Colts defense needs to be tagged as a team that you can run all over. After what the Packers did for them, it's going to take, I don't know what it would take for me to not just be excited for my running back going against this team. Plus, with the Jalen Warren injury, it is his. Even though I think he is not a very good runner, it's his against a very attackable matchup. Yes. And then Pickens, like, they just, I know Calvin Austin got home for you last week for Pittsburgh, but Pickens is the alpha in terms of the pass catchers there. If you are a believer in the Steelers being able to do something in this game, then yes, you must start him. Um, I guess let's go to the Colts real quick. For me, in case the audience could not tell, I would much rather start Anthony Richardson here. I get I get it. It's been terrible the past couple of weeks. I get that during the preseason, we had the Bengals co-practice or whatever, right, where they're saying this guy can't throw. Listen, he's taken his lumps. He's a mobile quarterback who came out of college with like under 20 career starts, and this is like his sixth career game in the NFL. It's gonna take him time. I would just urge fantasy owners, right? Like, I don't mind sitting him in this particular matchup if you can afford it, right? Like, if you have a Baker on your bench, I would feel good. I would probably pick Baker over Richardson, but just wait. I think that by the end of the year, Anthony Richardson is going to be back to elite quarterback one in fantasy. I just don't see, with the rushing upside, with being attached to a Shane Steichen offense, how he can't get there. I'm betting on the kid being able to progress. But yeah, tough matchup. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe Colts upset. Maybe Colts money line makes it into the gambling show. We'll see. Also, quick question for Yanni. I see that Ricky is gone. Are we giving the Steelers respect now that they've made it to 3-0?
No, I just feel like the meme is played out because you know, I don't know. It's been a few weeks.
That's
I'm
fair.
letting it go.
I wasn't sure
Um,
if we were extending the olive branch.
no, 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 no. Fuck that franchise. Fuck that fan base. Seriously, they're awful. They're awful. Dude, I see him on Twitter every day. That guy that fucking victory lap, the Ayuk getting hit in the head on the end of the Rams game. Just look at him getting his head smashed in the dirt while we're 3-0. Oh my god, man. Yeah, no, and just the last thing, dude. It's not an out on Anthony Richardson thing. I think this is the worst matchup for quarterback in the NFL. Between the pass rush, between the fucking blitzing, I'm swearing a lot. Sorry, you got me worked up when I thought about the Steelers. Uh, between the blitzing, between the pass rush, between the pretty good secondary, dude. Not amazing, but good. I would. It maybe you could even look at it as a little bit less of an Anthony Richardson call. It's like I truly do believe the Steelers are the worst matchup for a team in the NFL, and they run the ball so damn much you get a low play count. You know what I mean? So it's like there's like three or four factors when you're playing the Steelers that just make me go and then the Colts can't stop the run. So like the Steelers are probably going to have like a 7 to 11 minute drive at some point in the game.
That's my X factor in this game. It's just the Colts have not shown an ability to stop the run on anybody, not
Well,
on any team that's not the Chicago Bears, right? Who can't hold up a block to save their life. So I get that. I get the profile there. I don't know. To me, this Steelers thing, it's gonna come around. It's gonna come around. Right now, they've had a pretty easy schedule. They got Kirk on week one back, right? Like, this Colts team doesn't look right now to me, so it wouldn't shock me if they won this one. That's why Vegas is Vegas has them as the favorites, right? So it wouldn't shock me if they won, but it wouldn't be a free tendies podcast without saying this Steelers team are frauds. They aren't going to be in the conversation long term. They have a nice defense, but we'll see. I'll probably be hate watching this game, honestly, if we're keeping it a buck, for sure. All right, next we got the Rams going into Chicago to play the Bears. Jimmy and the Rams. The Rams have an implied team total of 19 points. The Bears have an implied team total of 21 and a half points. For the Rams, it's very simple. We are starting Kyron and we're sitting everyone else right now. And for the Bears, we are starting DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. Welcome to the Start Club. I think that's the first time he's made it this year. We don't have any blatant sits, and we're tricky decisioning Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Caleb, and Cole Kmet. So we'll start with the Rams side first because there was definitely a lot more conversation with the Bears. I mean, the Rams are coming off a great win last week against the 49ers, but the fact of the matter is they are so injured right now that other than Kyron, who is like their bell cow, like no thank you against this Bears defense, even though their offense has not played well and the Bears have lost a lot of games and not looked good. This is still a legitimate defense. I believe we've used the term Super Bowl defense. We really like this defense. It's going to be tough sledding out there, I think, for them. So like if you're thinking about Jordan Whittington, if you're thinking about chasing the points of Tutu Atwell, if you're looking at God, I don't even know the other guy, Tyler Johnson, maybe. No thank you. No thank you on that. Don't do it. Save yourself. Save yourself the disappointment. Then for the Bears, this one's a little bit more interesting. So DJ Moore and Rome Odunze at this point, or I guess DJ Moore is the only guy I would profile as like a you're still starting him every week until further notice. Rome made a step last week. Obviously, Keenan was not in the game, and Caleb threw for 360 yards. He didn't look great doing it, but he did throw for 360 yards against the Colts. I don't know if Rome keeps his involvement in this offense. He's been running and getting open, right? If Caleb looks his way, I would think that he's going to be a regular contributor sooner rather than later. And this is a plus matchup for him, so we're starting him. Keenan, he got like 11 targets week one, but he's coming off the heel. There's still some question about whether or not he'll be healthy or totally healthy. I'm kind of interested to see when he comes back what the target share is. I'm kind of back on my week one thing with this Bears team. I'm still like scouting to see where Caleb is going to go. Caleb is another one. Obviously, he showed some life last week. He threw his first touchdown pass as a NFL starter. He threw for a lot of yards against the Colts team, but he still missed a lot of throws. Threw two picks against the Colts defense, who we've flagged as not being very good. He's still going through his growing pains. So even though this is a plus matchup, I feel like it was important to call him a tricky decision because we're not 10 toes down on him being there yet. Like another rookie quarterback we'll discuss later in the show. DeAndre Swift, I almost lean sit on this guy, dude. Like he looks. I don't know if it's a him problem or if it's a Chicago Bears cannot block anybody problem, but they got nothing going against the Colts last week. If you can't get a running game established against the Colts, I don't know who you can establish it against. And then Cole Kmet, we're throwing his tricky decision. He had like a, how many points was it, Yanni? Like a 21-point game last week?
20.9 and half PPR.
So 20.9 and half PPR. Obviously, the tight end position is a wasteland right now, right? So that would be like a top three tight end scorer of the week. We are putting him as a tricky decision because Keenan Allen is profiling to be back. And at least from what we've seen right now, he's kind of getting that safety blanket, easy kind of target stuff, which Cole Kmet had gotten the majority of the work in against the Colts last week in a really weird matchup where they were throwing it a bunch. So that's why he's tricky decision. I wouldn't feel super great about chasing the points on that one, but I wouldn't argue against it. It is a plus matchup. You got anything to add on to this one, brother?
No, I mean, it's sort of interesting. The top three receivers in the NFL right now in air yards are Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors 1, Marvin Harrison Jr. 2, Rome Odunze 3. So we saw that last week translate to a 20-plus point game. If Keenan comes back, I wonder if based on the way that Caleb and Odunze like to work together, I didn't really think he was this kind of player, but it looks like he likes taking these big shots to Odunze. I don't know. It's really that one game really blew it out because he also airmailed him on you always like to point out that the metrics nerds. Like there were a few plays where he just sailed the ball 55 yards downfield over Odunze's head, and he got air yards for those. So it was skewed a little bit. But I do wonder if when Keenan comes back, if it doesn't become a situation where Odunze is more eating into the DJ Moore role, the downfield big passing role, and Keenan's working underneath. It'll be really interesting to see. But keep an eye out. I mean, if Odunze goes off again, we're in full-blown breakout. Him and Caleb were throwing together all summer before the draft. They went and they didn't get an O lineman to get Odunze. Odunze's dad's putting out clips of him being open and running in the end zone. Just this game's going to say a lot. And then Swift is a lot closer to a sit than a start. If Roschon keeps eating into his work, Khalil keeps eating into his work, he's not getting dump offs, it might be over for Swift. Might be over before it started.
Until further notice, I will not start any Bears running back. I just wouldn't do it. I don't own any of them. I didn't draft any of them.
Did we draft it? I was going to say across like 15 rosters between the two of us. Did you take any of it?
Nope.
I took one round 14 Khalil Herbert, and I dropped him.
No. Interesting call on the Odunze DJ Moore thing. We'll see. I mean, Caleb has not been taking those deep shots to DJ Moore this year. That I have noticed that. Like, and if he has taken them, it hasn't been close yet. So we'll see. To me, DJ Moore's still the guy to own in Chicago, but
100%.
We'll see. I wonder if Keenan is the odd man out here. I don't know. I would have to see more of it, right? This team is one of the ones I think that we still need to see more, right? And they're gonna go as Caleb goes. So if you can't run the ball, it's on the kid, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The biggest thing to me, I just don't know. God knows, how it's gonna turn. One of these Bears receivers is way too cheap in trade market value right now. One of the Bears receivers is a potential, because there is going to be a one dude. I don't think it's going to be this weird split up thing. I think Caleb is going to lock in on one of these guys. One of them's value is way too low right now. I got Odunze off the waivers this week in 2 leagues for $10 and $6. Like, I don't know, man. Like something weird. Or Keenan. Keenan might be free. Something to think about. One of their values is way off right now, and they're going to end up developing into a league winner, I think.
I have not seen Rome Odunze on a single waiver wire. You're playing with chumps. That's fucking crazy. And getting for $10 too. Insane.
In 2 leagues, dude. Cut in 2 leagues. Where just someone said, no, he's done. I was like, okay.
If you drop in Rome Odunze after 3 weeks, you're not a good fantasy football player. I'm sorry, boys. That was never the vision with him.
Free money. Okay, a game I am so stoked for this game. I'm kind of a closeted Buccaneers fan, I guess. They're just like a team I have an affinity for because I think they're a well-run team, and they always have fun players. Like even before they got Brady, I'd play with them on Madden and stuff. I don't know. Always like the Bucs. And they can help out the Niners this week. Eagles, 23.5 implied team total. Buccaneers, 21-point implied team total at home. The Buccaneers or the Eagles are pretty banged up. I'm actually kind of surprised if the Buccaneers didn't have such a bad showing last week. I don't know if they'd be coming in here as favorites going on the road. But look, Devonta Smith is in concussion protocol. Keep an eye on that. I would be surprised if he passes. He was out cold, dude. Out cold. The NFL's concussion protocol is very much more lax than the UFC's. If you got knocked out like that in the UFC, that is 6 months no contact. I have no idea by what standards they are pushing him through in 5 days to get him out in the field. I would be stunned if he goes. And then it sounds like A.J. Brown is going to miss another week with his hamstring, but keep an eye on practice reports. He would need to get at least 2 limited practices in Friday and Saturday for it to even be a possibility. With the way tight end is, you're starting Goddard, you're starting Jalen every week, and God, you're starting Saquon. Good for you if you drafted him. Good for you if you did not listen to the advanced metrics that trashed Saquon for the last 2 years. And you were brave and you bet on the talent, you bet on what you saw, you're getting rewarded for it. And then Dotson. Dotson becomes a really interesting DFS play. Really, that other kid that they had break out a little bit, Covey, he got hurt and he's on IR now. I believe season-ending IR. I think he broke his shoulder last week. Brown down, Smith down. Jalen has no one to throw it to. And this Bucs defense is tough, but they can be got a little bit through the air. I think Dotson all of a sudden becomes a really great DFS play. He should be like 3,000, maybe $3,400. I didn't check before this. Um, I love him in DFS. I don't know if you're going to start him in redraft. Buccaneers, you got your big three, and yes, I'm putting Baker in the big three at least for now. He had a bad week this week, but I do think a lot of those two QB rosters, like you're probably starting Baker a lot of these weeks here when he has a plus matchup. This is a plus matchup. The between Saquon and between Jalen, they should score enough points that Baker has to pass this week. They have dog water corners, right? Godwin's and Evans have both looked great at different points this year. You'd like them to both look great together, but no matter what, Baker has had weapons to get the ball down the field. Even McMillan is like a really good player. He just doesn't get the work. So you're starting those three. You're going to sit McMillan and Otten. Otten flashed a little bit last week. If you want to roll the dice on DFS, I don't hate it. And then tricky decisions. I cannot believe, based on the difference in their ADPs, we are at the point where Bucky and White, I don't even have them that far apart in the rest of the season unless you're talking full PPR. Bucky is, I think, averaging 7-something yards a carry. White is averaging like 3-something. White has been one of the least efficient running backs in football since he came in the league. You have to be real nervous if you're a White holder right now. You are going to rely on the dump off. He's going to get the dump offs. He makes plays off the receptions. He's probably going to get 5 to 7 targets a game. And game scripts like this where they're behind, they are going to dump it off. He's a perfectly fine flex play. I think a lot of people are probably in a spot where you have to start him as your RB2. He went as high in my full PPR league. He went at pick 32, 31, 32. And I saw him in a lot of drafts go between like 35 and 45. I took one share at pick 50. I regret it. But yeah, man, keep an eye out. And if Bucky starts eating into his passing downward, all of a sudden Bucky's on league winner watch this week. We'll see. I don't think it'll be this week. But if Bucky starts catching passes too, oh my God. That is around 13, 14, 15 waiver wire pickup that you got that might end up really determining some leagues down the road.
Yeah. My only note on this game is I really think Goddard has tight end one overall this week on the table with because I'm going to go ahead and say Devontae is probably not playing this week too. It seems to me like from the very onset of AJ Brown's injury that it was probably a 2-weeker. So Goddard is the guy that Jalen is familiar with and has been there, and that's how you beat this Buccaneers team. I think tight end one is on the table for him this week as
He
a
was
fantasy
last week.
score. Yeah, he was last week too. You saw it. You saw it when the guys went down. Like, who did Jalen look at, right? It was Goddard. It was his safety blanket for more or less, right? It's like we've seen these games and like all of the Lions receivers went down and it was just Hawkinson and like Goff playing pitch and catch. Like, man, this should be good. And then yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I would not be shocked to see Bucky Irving starting over Rachaad White and being the back to own by like week 8. It's coming here. It's coming soon. As a fantasy manager who believed in Bucky Irving the entire time and has a 25% roster exposure to him, I'm excited for the takeover.
Oh yeah, right. You claimed him this week. Fuck. I drafted Bucky Irving. Ted picked him up off the board. Ted traded for him. God. Yeah, you
It,
get to claim him now.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
traded for him. I don't have the cred that Yanni does that he drafted him. I didn't see this coming, but I liked what I saw so much in the first couple weeks. I decided to sell my team, and I sold ETN for future draft capital and Bucky Irving. And quite frankly, I'm excited to have my RB2 in a couple weeks here. All right, next we got the Patriots coming to San Francisco to play the 49ers. The Patriots have an implied team total of 14.75 points, and the Niners have an implied team total of 24.75 points. For the Patriots, we are starting Ramondre Stevenson and Hunter Henry. More on that in a minute. That was a point of contention. And we are sitting the rest of the Patriots. For the Niners, we're starting Brock Purdy. We're starting Jordan Mason. We're starting George Kittle, DFS Smash Play, and Jawan Jennings. And surprisingly, we're tricky decisioning Brandon Ayuk. So we'll start with the Patriots first. I think that one will be a little bit easier. Fantasy managers, do not freak out about your Ramondre Stevenson 0.6 point game last week. I get it felt really bad to lose your week before you even get to Sunday. I get it. You got to trust the process with this Patriots team. They want to run the ball, ground and pound, and that Stevenson is going to be the centerpiece of this offense, the Alex Van Pelt. Cleveland Browns offense, you want to roll him out. And for the same reason, the exact same reason I just said why you would start Ramondre Stevenson, you're going to start Hunter Henry too. I get that he historically has had boom games followed up by 1 to 2 point games. And I don't think that's off the table for him this week. But the fact of the matter is, the tight end position is a landmine right now. Hunter Henry's usage is insane. His target share is insane. And this team doesn't really have anyone who's developed on the outside yet. So if the Patriots are going to ever throw the ball, it should be to Hunter Henry. So that's why he's a start. It's not a sexy start. It's not a great start, but he is a start if you need him. For the 49ers, I mean, a lot of this is pretty easy, right? Brock Purdy has I've loved. There's not a lot to like about how the Niners season has gone so far, but one of the things you can like is the way Brock Purdy has played. Without his Avengers, as Nick Wright likes to call them, he has risen above and played at a high level, at a top 10 level in this league. Absolutely start him, even though the Patriots defense has played pretty well so far. Yeah, no doubt about him. Same with Jordan Mason, one of my favorite Niners, and with CMC out, he's filled it admirably. Baby Marshawn Lynch. George Kittle should be returning this week. Watch the injury report and make sure that's going to be the case before you roll him out there. But with all of the guys missing, we're kind of projecting that target share goes to him. He's still a great player. He still is awesome when he's healthy and available. And then Juwan Jennings earning a full blown start after his almost 50-point week. I love seeing Juwan Jennings in the start column. He's been one of my favorite Niners nobody talks about for like 2 going on 3 years now. We've officially reached the point where people are talking about Juwan Jennings. I heard Colin Cowherd call him the by far the best wide receiver three in football, and I was like, hey buddy, I was there 2 years ago. Maybe you should watch the team. Um, Here's the deal. Probably the most shocking thing on the Niners is we're tricky decisioning Brandon Ayuk. If you are an analytics nerd, you will see that his win rate was very high last week. He had one of the highest win rates against coverage. That's great, but you have to catch the ball too. Even if you win your route, you have to have the ball thrown to you if you're going to win your route. And, right now, call me crazy. Juwan Jennings looked like the primary Brock Purdy's primary read, at least last week. Juwan Jennings looked like the guy Purdy trusted more last week. And Brandon Ayuk, it's just a rust issue for him, man. Like being in camp is important. That holdout has negatively impacted not only his season, but the 49ers season. You can see it. It's just a matter of time. But I wouldn't be shocked to see the rust still on him this week. If you have better options, it really depends. It would take a lot for me to put BA on my bench, but you can make some compelling arguments as guys you might roll over him. Like Yanni, would you rather start Deontay this week or Brandon Ayuk?
Deontay.
Yep, my point
I'd start
exactly.
I'd start Pickens over Ayuk this week.
That's a heady call. I'm almost there too, actually. So that just goes
Dude,
to
it's
show you.
yeah, sorry, finish your
I
thought.
was just gonna say that just goes to show you like kind of how I'm valuing him. I said this to Yanni last week, and I think he probably thought this was ridiculous. But I said value Brandon Ayuk as a low end two until further notice. Until he shows you the rest is off, I view him as a low end two.
Yeah, it's also the Christian Gonzalez matchup, dude. If that guy's out there destroying Garrett Wilson and Jamar Chase, I mean, I'm not so much of a homer that like, you know, Brandon Ayuk is not a better receiver than those two guys. So I also just expect Christian Gonzalez to really give him problems, which is why Jennings' volume should be really healthy this week. Um, and then just a little storyline I want to get going now. I think I want to be ahead on this one, okay? We've agreed that Mark Andrews has dropped off with the tightrope surgery. We've agreed that Kelsey is not who he used to be. Sam Laporta looks like he was a little TD dependent last year and constantly dealing with injuries, but he was not the prolific receiver. He caught a lot of touchdowns. I want to be early on this one. George Kittle's the best tight end in football. Maybe not the best fantasy tight end, but George Kittle's the best tight end in football, and he will wear that crown for 3 to 4 years, is my opinion on it. Brock Bowers will probably give him a run for his money. Let's see how it goes here. But for now, until proven otherwise, when you factor in run blocking, when you factor in red zone usage, George Kittle is the best tight end in football.
Man,
Just an
I
opinion. Been thinking
well,
about it all week.
I've been there with George for like a long time. Obviously, I have my homer in me, right? So I think the past couple of years of Kelsey when he was like just breaking everything, Kelsey,
Yeah,
right? Like I was like, okay, I'll give it up. But I had Kittle as the solid number two just for everything that he does for a football team. Now that
yeah.
Kelsey just kind of seems like he's at his B or C level game, yeah, dude, I love George, love him.
Okay, Redskins at Cardinals. When the season rolled out, I don't know if you would look at this game and go, what a banger. 50 and a half over under on the game, okay? Redskins are implied team total 23 and a half at the Cardinals, 27 points at home. Honestly, the Redskins just put on a banger of a game against the Bengals. We are on full blown alert. The O line sucks, but I mean, is this going to end up being one of the most fantasy viable offenses in football? When you couple it with the fact that their defense is horrible. So if their defense is horrible and their offense is humming, all of a sudden you have a pretty interesting situation here. And because of that, we're starting Terry, we're starting Daniels. Robinson becomes a smash start, top 10 start of the week. Get him in all your DFS lineups. I have him in like, I think 3 or 4 rosters. I'm starting him in every single one of them. If Eckler misses, dude, and this guy gets a true 3-down workload, Eckler's been actually really good this year. He had a really sick run in the game. He had a great return. He gets usually between 5 and 6 catches a game. Like Eckler's sneakily been carrying a workload this year. If he's out and he's in the concussion protocol and it does look like he's going to be out, oh man, Robinson is a smash. Two guys I would probably rather, if you're really, now I don't know if I'm like this all in on it, right? Because I don't think his passing's there. But if you're going to roster a secondary receiver from the team, I would be rostering Noah Brown. But Luke McCaffrey and Noah Brown are sits this week. They're sort of in 14 and 16 team leagues. I think you should roster them. They're sort of just interesting guys to keep an eye on. I think Noah Brown's a talented player. And he had like 3 or 4 games where he was I think either a high end 2 or low end wide receiver 1 last year for the Cowboys. There sits this week, but keep an eye on him. If Jaden really keys into one of them, is that second guy behind McLaurin all of a sudden may become a little interesting. And then your sort of tricky decision is Zach Ertz. He's seeing enough volume in full PPR. You're probably starting him this week. Revenge game for him. Revenge game for Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, he's just been interesting. Interesting little waiver wire pick. Ben Sinote, bag holders and shambles. Just something to keep an eye on. Although Sinote did have the sick block, that Eckler play that busted for the 40-yard touchdown or 30-yard touchdown, Sinote washed the whole line down with a reach block or a down block. Really, really cool play if you go see it on Twitter or whatever. Cardinals, you're starting your big guys. Kyler, MHJ, Connor. Trey did not, he entered concussion protocol. That one didn't look good either. And I would guess that because Tua's created this kind of panic around concussions, although they are serious, there should be a panic around. I don't know if he's going this week either, but you're going to have to keep an eye. 2 limited practices. He would need to get in 2 limited practices before the end of the week, before he's good to go. There's 5 steps to the protocol. You'll see when he takes each one. Keep an eye on it. But you're starting him if he's in. And then Michael Wilson. Dortch is banged up. The skin secondary is absolute garbage. They have the capacity to score a lot of points. The Cardinals have been scoring a lot of points. You could do a lot worse for a DFS dart throw this week than Michael Wilson. Some cheap guys. Really good value in DFS this week, by the way. I think I'm going to play a good amount of lineups.
Yeah, I would just so for I think the Redskins have a lot to talk about right now. At least for now, I would be very optimistic about having Redskins guys if you drafted them. If you did not draft them, I would be careful in terms of what you're willing to pay to get them in a trade, just because for the first couple of weeks we had not seen Cliff Kingsbury willing to open up the playbook to Jaden, and he opened it up on Monday, and that was night and day. Watching the offense operate on Monday was night and day from what we've seen. So it's drastic. I wonder if Cliff will kind of open it up. I think he will. Like when you get that kind of performance from Jaden, you get all of these guys coming alive that were kind of fantasy dead before. I would be shocked to see him kind of rein it back. But just, I feel like that disclaimer has to be thrown out there. And then Zach Ertz, I mean, he's not he's probably not even a better tight end than Ben Sano, but the call on him has always been that he played with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. He's familiar with the system. He's going to operate as a safety blanket for Jaden. I'm thinking that as Jaden progresses, Ertz is going to fall off because why would you throw a 5 yard crosser to Ertz when you could take your shot to Terry for 50 yards? God, that's so great for my fantasy teams. He was the Terry usage is driving me crazy, but yeah, we'll kind of see how that goes. Then for the Cardinals, I at least my read on it, it's early in the week, so it's hard to say. I don't think Trey McBride is going though, which makes me like Michael Wilson a little bit more. This Washington team has to be flagged as a fantasy friendly team that you want to start everybody you can against.
I mean,
But
they're the number, aren't they like the number one? Because they have an offense that'll put up enough points to force you to keep passing. They have
mhm.
a garbage defense. They have to be the number one fantasy start, right?
Yep. Fun fact for the fans, the Washington Redskins have not punted the football in 2 weeks straight. Credit to that offense getting it done, man. Right now, Jaden Daniels is my runaway rookie of the year. It didn't take much to get him there, but well, actually,
Neighbors, no, it's not runaway. Neighbors will give him a run for his money.
yeah, that's what I just thought about that. I was like, oh wait, yeah, neighbors probably,
Dude, a
yeah,
New York receiver. Neighbors is going to be a star in New York. Like, but I mean, the quarterback will probably. Yeah. Hilarious, by the way, that those two guys were throwing to each other in college.
yeah, dude. LSU really is kind of like wide receiver U, isn't it? Like,
They're an NFL factory.
yeah,
Do you see when Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow went up to shake his hand and they know him because they went to go see their alumni? He was their alumni game. How many quarterbacks in fantasy would you rather have over Jaden rest of season?
Mahomes, Hurts, Allen.
Mahomes,
Yep, I'll still take Mahomes because I think they're just gonna have to pass more, right? But after the big three, right, and probably Lamar, I think
Lamar.
Jaden's right there. I think Jaden, the way he plays, right, it's very Lamar-ish. Like it just is. But he's probably a little bit more accurate on his deep ball if he gets the opportunity to throw the deep ball. So at least right now, I'm penciling him in for top five rest of the season. He's just
Kyler.
barely there.
For me, it would be Allen, Lamar, Kyler, and
Oh,
Hurts.
Kyler too. I
I, but he would be my fifth. I would rather have him than Mahomes, but he would be my fifth. I think Kyler, just because of the track record and also likelihood to get hurt. I think all those guys get down and Jaden plays like a fullback. So like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that probably that Kyler's very close to me. I think the tie right now goes to I don't trust I don't fully trust Cliff Kingsbury yet to keep it opened up, right? Like I
yeah,
mean,
like I would.
if you were a Terry McLaurin manager, you were watching and pulling your hair out the first 2 weeks. Like I mean, it's not that they were bad. Jaden was still getting you home, right? It was just like the game plan and the usage, the excessive screens, it was very frustrating to watch. But hopefully, this is the start of something good out there. Next, we got Cleveland going into Las Vegas to play the downtrodden and just defeated Raiders, and I guess the Browns really are downtrodden and defeated too. This is like a sad. The Panthers and the Raiders was my Super Bowl last week. This is like I feel bad for both teams. I hope they can both win Super Bowl just because it's not going good for either of them. The Browns have an implied team total of 19.5 points. The Raiders have an implied team total of 18 points. So Vegas thinks this is a gross game with not very much scoring. For the Browns, we're starting Amari Cooper and Jerome Ford, and we're tricky decisioning Tug and Jerry Judy. And for the Raiders, we're starting Bowers and Adams, and we're sitting everyone else. So let's start on the Brown side first. Amari Cooper finally had a good fantasy week last week. I mean, I still would profile Amari as a very volatile guy, right? Like he's not someone you could put in your lineup and count on big points every week, but the potential is there. He's not dead yet as a fantasy asset. And then Jerome Ford, I mean, managers last week were a little bit worried about the Dante Foreman usage, him being in on the first possession. I think that some of the panic was calmed last week. Ford was the primary guy. He was getting the he got the majority of the work. I think Foreman touched the ball twice. And this is a plus matchup against the Raiders. Chuba Hubbard just looked like CMC against Las Vegas. There's no reason that we shouldn't project Ford to have a startable game here. Tricky decisions. I'll start with Tug first. He hasn't been good this year, but I've seen some baby steps from him. He's still like, in my opinion, probably a shot fighter. But this is a plus matchup, and I mean, this Browns team beat the Jaguars. I don't know how much better or worse the Raiders are than the Jaguars, but I think it's the same zip code. I think Watson put up 18 against them. Superflex probably a start. 12 team, I wouldn't. I wouldn't unless you're a sicko. And then Jerry Judy just kind of by proxy. He got there the first couple weeks. Amari finally kind of took over last week. He kind of put the concerns to bed. Hey, I'm not dead yet. So Judy, second option. Don't love the player. Don't love the offense, but it's a plus matchup. We might as well put him in there. You could consider it. For the Raiders, that was a disappointing week last week. But I mean, until further notice, Bowers and Adams in the starting lineup. It's just hard to take them out, right? Like I could see if you have an extraordinary wide receiver situation, I could maybe see letting Adams sit this one. But this Browns passing attack, not passing attack, this Browns secondary is really good. Despite what Malik Neighbors just did to them, they are a good unit. They are good in pass coverage. And that for that reason we're sitting the rest, right? Like we saw against the Panthers, we marked it very clearly. It's a Zamir White bust watch. He didn't do anything against probably the easiest matchup in the NFL, not named the Indianapolis Colts, to run on. We're officially saying this Raiders team cannot run the ball, and not only that, it's against the Cleveland Browns, who still have a good defense. Unfortunate for Gardner. I like the kid, but have him ride the pine this week. Jacoby Myers, I know he kind of got home for you last week in garbage time. No, thank you against this Browns team, and we'll see. I'm not out on this Raiders team. I think that they just kind of. I just don't think they were expecting the Panthers to be a competent football team. It caught them at the wrong time. I don't think the Raiders are a top end team, but I don't think they're a bottom of the barrel team. I think they'll get it together eventually, but not this week. Not feeling confident in any of those guys. Do you have anything you want to tack onto this depression bowl, Yanni?
No, I expect Ford to have a good week this week, and I expect Cooper to have a good week this week. That's why they're starts. I would say that Zamir White is getting close to like throw him in the bin status. I wouldn't say cut him, but like he's going to ride the pine forever. Alexander Madison averaging 11 half PPR points per game, a touchdown in every week the last 3 weeks. You're not starting him this week, but keep an eye out. His snap share rose last week. If all of a sudden he starts taking like 45, 55% of the workload, 55, 60% of the workload, if he keeps his 5 to 6 targets up, it may be a situation where he becomes like an emergency flex, where he maybe has trade value you want to look for. I don't know. Just the only interesting thing there is, does the running back usage flip? 11.5 PPR points per game isn't amazing, but it's like a, I don't know, usable player. That's what I'll be watching. That's the most interesting thing. Adams, I think you may have had a sell high window last week. I don't know. I
Are
think you
you
might
out
have
on
wanted to
him
move.
rest of season? Like you just don't want him on your roster?
I think it's like more likely he gets traded somewhere than he becomes fantasy relevant with the Raiders every week.
Who would trade for him? Like if he goes to the Steelers, I think it's just
It's
wasted.
not the Steelers.
Who do you think would
I,
go
I,
get him?
I think the Niners would trade for him. Um, I 100% think the Niners would trade for him. I think they wouldn't trade him to the Chiefs, right? But the Chiefs would. The Bills. I think the Bills would
Oh,
100% trade for him. I'm trying to think of like top end. Baltimore. Baltimore would trade for him. Any team that thinks they can legitimately win a Super Bowl this year, I think would put in a request.
I
And
would
I think
love
it's coming.
I would love to see him in Buffalo, dude. That would be insane.
Oh my god,
That would be
dude, it's
insane.
worth it. Like what a Super Bowl window means is you have a legitimate, like a little period, right? And Josh Allen's is closing. I think at that point, if the Raiders said we want your, it'd be like a pick 30 to 32, one of the last 4 picks in the first round. If the Raiders told him we need a first round pick, I think you just do that. I think you just do that, and dude, you're not gonna have any of the Diggs problems, any of the Deepa problems. Do you know how well he'd vibe? And he doesn't. What does he care about freezing cold games? The dude
Oh.
dominated in Green Bay for a year. No, it's a match made in heaven if they do it.
I
But
will
so,
go on the record saying this. I think that if Devontae Adams goes to the Buffalo Bills, they should be favored to win the conference over the Chiefs. I just do.
oh, if he goes to the Buffalo Bills, I'd take him as my Super Bowl pick, 100%.
Hmm.
Dude, the teams that's, oh my God. You have Kincaid and Cook and him, and then Shakir's a nice little number two. Coleman's working as an, oh my God.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I would trade a one right now if I were the Bills. All right, Chiefs at the Chargers. Chargers with, I believe, the second to lowest implied team total of the week, only behind the Niners, or only behind the Patriots at the Niners. Chiefs 24.5 point implied team total. Chargers 15.5. That's a reflection of the Herbert injury. For the Chiefs, little bit of a debate, right? Do I think Mahomes is a sit this week? Tricky decision this week. Ted insisted on a start. He probably is a start. I mean, how many rosters are you realistically sitting in? But I don't know how much he's going to have to pass this week. I do think Rice, Kelsey, and Steele are starts. Steele got 17 touches last week. A lot of those were garbage time, but he got 17 touches in the Chiefs offense. And this will be a game where they have a beautiful game script all week. Roll them out, man. Roll them out. Even if the Chargers are a good rushing defense, I think pretty good chance he falls in the end zone there. And then Kelsey. So, well, and Rice, nothing needs to be said. Rice is a top 10 start every week. Kelsey is sort of interesting, right? People have been really trashing him, but I went and, I was curious about his, yards of separation per route run, all this sort of stuff. I wanted to know, is he old? Is he dust? He's actually getting separation on his routes. It seems like it may be a game script thing, or it may be I don't know, that they haven't really needed to pass. Kelsey's not done at all, and you are still starting him every week, but I think this week he actually has a good week. Probably gets his first touchdown this week. You're going to sit Perrin. Perrin is a start when they're trailing and need to dump the ball off in full PPR. Worthy's had a couple down weeks in a row. He's not seeing any sort of elite usage, 3 to 5 targets a game. And I don't think this is the week you're going to want to roll him out there. He's a fine flex, depending on who you have to start. But buys haven't started yet. I would hope on most rosters you have a better choice to roll out Devin Worthy, but he is a tricky decision. He could get a touchdown. He's liable to catch a 40-yard bomb every single time he touches the field. So not the worst start, but I would probably try to avoid it. And then for the Chargers, if Herbert's hurt, J.K. Dobbins is a start just because he's been productive all year. He's been on my sell high list for 2 weeks now. I hope you guys sold him. I don't see it getting better. And based on the orthopedic surgeon that I heard break down his injury, he said he expects him to have a ton of juice weeks 1 and 2, slow down weeks 3, 4, 5, and then drop off a cliff after week 5. I don't know. Injuries aren't an exact science, but nobody's ever beaten the Achilles injury before. Cam Akers is doing his best impression, but he's never been the same player since. But I do think you're going to start him. He'll catch enough dump offs. They'll try to run the ball with him. He might get 15 or 20 carries this week. But yeah, the rest of them, please don't be starting Chargers.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the Chargers just. I love Jim. I love Jim as a coach, but without Herbert, without the captain steering the ship, Easton Stick is not going to be able to do it against this Chiefs defense. But I guess like what I want to talk about on the Chiefs is I don't know, like unless you think that something has fundamentally changed about this team, I don't see how you could not have Mahomes as like a top 5 guy going forward. I get that it's been weird. I get that he hasn't scored like over 20 fantasy points a game since like November of last year, right? Like I think the last time like Mahomes at over 20, like Trevor Lawrence won a football game. So it's been a while since he's kind of gotten you there and been like that fantasy stud. But I don't know, man. To me, it seems like things just haven't shaken out right for the Chiefs yet. To me, like with the Pacheco injury, I still see this as a team that's going to want to pass a neutral pass rate a little bit more. And I mean, like it's been great owning Rice, right? Like if you're bought in on Mahomes being the best guy to ever grab a football or whatever, right? Like I wouldn't panic. If man, maybe I should have put him on my buy lows. Like if people like are actually not even having him as like a top 5 fantasy quarterback rest of season, you might be able to sneak him out in a deal. I don't know. I like Carson Steele as a player, but I don't
So
know.
just to be clear on why I was looking this up while you were talking. Just to be clear on why it's been great owning Rice, he's currently outscoring Mahomes by almost 7 points in half PPR and 20 points in full PPR. So yeah. When Rice is scoring significantly more than his quarterback, it's a good thing to own. Give me Rice, not Mahomes. Mahomes is
You
averaging
could just
like
have them
16.
both. Like I don't I get
He's
it.
averaging He's averaging 16 points a game, 6 to 7 points under projected a week every game this year.
Do
So
you
under
think
his,
that he's just like not gonna go over 20 ever? I struggle to see unless you really think something has fundamentally changed about these Chiefs, right? Like my, at least
well,
for the
yeah,
first couple weeks, right? Like other than the Ravens, they've kind of struggled to score as easily as they usually do, right? Like I don't know. I don't think that's sticky though. Like I don't know. Maybe they're just one of those teams that are like so used to being like Super Bowl contenders at this point that they don't even take the regular season seriously, right? Like if you've been playing in major games for the past 3 years, you have three Super Bowls under your belt, and you look at the Chargers without Justin Herbert, like I get how you could not take that very seriously, but I don't know, man. I'm still bought in on this Chiefs team. Like I wouldn't be panicking. I don't think anybody is panicking, but I don't know.
I would just say that the two fundamental realities of their situation are they have a top five defense, one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, and they have shown a commitment to getting their running backs 20 touches a game for like 2 years now, 3 years almost since Pacheco broke out. So if your defense is holding them to like top five in points per game and you're running the ball 20 times a game, he doesn't need to do what he used to do. And he shouldn't do what he used to do. I don't know. To me, I think if you're in on Mahomes fantasy value, that's a name brand thing. It's just because he's a big name. Dude, he's been good. I mean, 16 points a game is viable. Quarterback hasn't been good this year. But like, I think Jaden Daniels is at like 23, 24 points a game. So the difference in starting Jaden Daniels over Mahomes is like a flex level player difference every week.
I just think it's important to separate out like you gotta recognize when people are fucking great football players, right? Like Mahomes is a
Yeah.
great football player.
Yes.
It I don't like I think Jaden Daniels has an argument over Mahomes. I personally wouldn't do it, but I could at least listen to the argument if you're talking about rushing upside and like game flow, that sort of thing. I think there's going to be major positive regression coming from Mahomes, would be my guess. I think right now he has like 4 picks on the year. Like, does he have more picks than touchdowns? Like, I don't know exactly. It's got to be close though. Like,
I want to say he's thrown a pick in like the last 9 regular season games he's played, or the last 7.
it's weird, man.
But he's not. It's not like this is. It's not like a Mahomes take. It's just specifically for fantasy. Now, like I would say that one of the bigger things though that he has going for him is look at the other top five. He call them top six with him included, right? He has like a tenth of the injury risk of the rest of them. So that also does factor in. He's very stable. You're going to always get 15 to 20 points out. Fine.
All
I
right,
just think upside's lacking.
all right. Enough Mahomes glazing. We're going to the next one.
Yeah, okay. Bills at Ravens. Awesome game. Awesome game. Um, Bills 24 and a half implied point implied team total. Ravens 22. The Bills have been a pretty straightforward story this year, I guess. The straightforward story is they spread the ball around. And it's really frustrating, I guess, from a fantasy perspective, kind of like Mahomes the last year or two. Amazing offense, amazing quarterback scoring all these points. It's just kind of hard to pinpoint who's going to be the producer there, and the ball is getting spread around. Like Dawson Knox is getting touches. Tyler Johnson, annoyingly, I think Tyler Johnson's had like, I don't know, 80 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. I've seen 2 of them that I have stuck in my head about why is Tyler Johnson out there catching balls and scoring touchdowns. So look, that's kind of the, when we say starts or whatever, we're talking about relative to them, right? But so you're starting Allen. Cook is a stud. Congratulations. Great pick on Cook in the 4th round. You're starting Allen. Looks like he's going to be the #1 overall player in fantasy this year. And looks like not just that. Looks like he might kind of be at the point where he accounts for like a player and a half, a player and 3/4 every week, which is just unreal. Very rare that you get people like that basically add a spot to your roster every week. But Allen is on that level this year. And then again, I don't know if it's a back and forth between me and Ted. A point of conversation we've kept going this year is, well, who's the guy to own there at wide receiver? Who did you draft? Who did I draft? Whatever. It looks like Khalil Shakir is at least operating as their most productive receiver right now. Certainly not their X receiver by any means, but he's had 3 good weeks. 3 good weeks. Got a nice touchdown this week where he broke a tackle, broke up an explosive play. So he's going to be our start. Coleman's going to be the tricky decision there. Coleman, a little bit of a slow start to the season from like an overall numbers wise, but they clearly are committed to getting him in there as their like X receiver. And obviously, the thing with rookies is they only get better as the year goes on. I would expect him to ramp up. He was essentially a first round pick. He's connected to the Bills. He's connected to Allen. Um, for this week, a little bit of a talented secondary, not a well performing secondary. Tricky decision. Kincaid, you're starting. Tight end's a fucking mess. Ravens. Pretty much every week you're starting Lamar, Flowers, Henry. Normally you would say, and every week you're starting Andrews. So we're sitting Bateman. Andrews and Likely are tricky decisions. They had a combined 0.9 points. A combined 0.9 points last week. I know a lot of people, Andrew Erickson over at Fantasy Pros, I really like his analysis in terms of the way he thinks jives with me. So I do really like it. He was so high on Andrews as the tight end one this year. I took Andrews in the mid-fifth round. I was elated in one of my leagues. I really don't know. I really don't know what the deal is. He had the tightrope procedure, and the tightrope procedure has ended a few careers, and it's permanently dropped efficiency in a few careers. Tony Pollard said he didn't feel right until like week 12 last year. And then they had that third guy that was working in last week. I just don't know. I don't know what you do. You're probably starting these two guys if they're your tight end one on your roster, because what are you going to do? And at least they have that in the range of their outcomes, right? That 7 or 15-point game. It doesn't feel good. I don't feel good having to start Andrews. I feel like I have to. I feel like I'm not going to pivot off him. I don't want to roster two tight ends when I took a fifth round tight end. And my roster, my bench is thin because I took him over someone like, Terry or Ramondre, whatever, whoever was there in that late fifth round. Just a bummer. Really tough situation all around.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot to talk about in this game. We'll start right there with the tight ends. To me, last week was obviously very disappointing. You've seen the staggering numbers where I believe Mark Andrews only ran 7 routes last week against the Cowboys. I would just urge fantasy owners, like, I think it's okay to panic about Andrews. I'm not saying don't panic about Andrews, but Lamar Jackson only dropped back 15 times to pass against the Cowboys last week. There was a very intentional game plan by the Ravens to run the ball down their throat against an undersized defense, and Andrews and Likely were staying into block a lot of the time. So I don't know. To me, I think I still need to see more to say it's a tightrope situation. To what my read on the Ravens tight end situation is I just think Likely is a good player, right? Like I think Likely is a good player and it's just commanded more time on the field, and it's like they're just eating into each other's production to the point where it feels gross to start either of them. With the offense that has Zay Flowers on it, right? Like Lamar isn't exclusively throwing to the tight ends. Historically, he's liked to do that, but he's been more willing to throw it to his wide receivers. It just feels like they're kind of eating off each other's plates right now. If you have Andrews on your roster, you probably just have to start him. It feels gross. You just got to hang in there unless you see like either a trade opportunity or an excellent tight end waiver wire pick, which I don't think you will. Um, then for the Bills,
Wait, real quick, do you want to know where I'm at with Andrews? Do you know what trade I sent out?
yeah,
What tight end do I love more than anyone?
Kittle.
But not Kittle, the other one.
I don't know.
Ferguson. Okay.
Oh,
I sent out Alexander Madison plus Andrews for Ferguson. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Please give me the 7th round, 8th round tight end for my premium fantasy asset plus an 11 point per game running back. I figured I'd have to sweeten the pot to get him to take it.
I just think for the Bills, they don't have a wide receiver one, brother. Like at least not yet. Right now, like I know Yanni said there is some debate. I would rank Shakir above Keon Coleman right now as the guy you want. I didn't draft any Shakir. I had one roster with Keon Coleman where it was affordable and I could take it, right? At least until further notice, this is a Josh Allen, James Cook team to me. So I think it's actually very easy to tell where the offense is going to be concentrated. And Kincaid, we saw some signs of life from him against, quite frankly, a Jaguars team that was not prepared to play football and just laid down for him. So we'll see what his involvement is going forward. But it's the big three of Allen, Cook, and Kincaid, with Shakir, in my mind, is like a distant favorite other option, right? But we'll kind of see how the usage goes as the year goes on. All right, next we got the Tennessee Titans, the 0-3 Tennessee Titans going into Miami to play the reeling Dolphins. The Titans favored yet again this week at a 19-point implied team total, and the Dolphins are a 17.5 implied point team total. For the Titans, our only start for you is Pollard. We're sitting Tajay Spears, and then we're tricky decisioning Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Levis. And for the Dolphins, we're starting Devon Achane. You'll notice a asterisk there. More on that in a minute. And Tyreek Hill. We are sitting Mostert and Waddle, and we're tricky decisioning Tyler Huntley, who I guess is starting this week instead of Skylar Thompson. So Mike McDaniel's seen enough of that. That's probably for the best for the Dolphins, I think. Skylar Thompson is not able to run that offense. But let's start with Tennessee first. I think it's an easier conversation to have. This is a power running football team. Obviously, they just got their teeth kicked in last week by the Packers. Lost the first gambling head to head against Yanni, but there'll be more on that in the gambling episode. But yeah, it hasn't looked good for Tennessee, but the one thing they have been able to do well is run the ball. That's what they want to do. I think they're going to want to try and limit Will Levis's mistakes, and this Dolphins defense is not a great one. So we're feeling good rolling out Pollard. Spears is more of a handcuff at this point. Um, so Levis is a tricky decision because he is. I don't know. I've never seen someone other than Carson Wentz be so supremely talented and make some of the craziest decisions I've ever seen. Like I think I was saying this earlier this week. It's like he must see things on the field that our feeble minds couldn't even comprehend. Like I wonder what's going through Will Levis's mind, like when he does some of the things that he does. Like if you guys have seen the viral Twitter clip on 4th and 2 last week of him trying to jump over two defenders, like I'd love to like see what it's like in his head. Like, dude, I got this. Like, does he think he just clears them both? I don't know what his deal is. Unreliable but talented, and this is a game where I think that it should be competitive. So, worth it, the tricky decision. Hopkins finally making it back to tricky decision. He's playing through a partially torn MCL, which is an insane thing to say for an 0-3 Tennessee Titans team. But he actually got some run last week. He got some targets. He was getting there. He scored fantasy points for you finally, so good enough. And then Ridley, he's operating as the one in this offense. It's just more of a condemnation of Will Levis's consistency that he is in tricky decision. I still like the player. If he is given the opportunity and if Levis can figure it out, we're going to start seeing him in the start column more. For the Dolphins, let's do the Devon Achane talk. So if you are watching, if you're a fan of the show and you've been watching our free agent episodes, we have been telling you for the past 2 weeks to sell Devon Achane. This is the week where I think it all comes crumbling down. Right now, he's evaluated as a top 5 fantasy running back, but we're getting Raheem Mostert back in the Dolphins offense this week. Again, we're shooting this on Tuesday. Keep track of your waiver wires. Like, just check and see if Mostert is going to play. If he does play, though, you're looking at a backfield split with him, A Chain, Jalen Wright is in the conversation too. I think it's still up in the air which of Mostert and Achane will be getting more of the work, who will be operating as the 1A, who will be operating as the 1B. The Dolphins don't have a quarterback at this point. Maybe Huntley is like just comes in and plays well and the Dolphins look revived. I don't think so though. And this Tennessee Titans defense, even though the Packers had their way with them last week, they're a good defense. I think that the wheels are going to fall off here on the A-Chain bandwagon. It was your last call to sell him. We'll see how he looks this game. I am calling under 7 point fantasy game this week, though, which isn't that insane, but I think it's going to start getting depressing for A-Chain bag holders. Tyreek Hill is a start because you just have to. You just have to, unfortunately. You drafted him too high, and historically, he's been the one who gets there out of the, if you can call it getting there, between him and Waddle with not Tua in the lineup. I think he will be schemed up. I think it'll be, just he'll be a focal point of the offense, however limited it may be. Jalen Waddle to that effect. Without Tua, he's not a start for me. I'm sorry, unless they get competent quarterback play. And then Huntley just DFS based on the rushing upside. I don't like him as a passer. I don't really like this matchup for him, but rushing upside is king in fantasy. You got anything you want to tack onto this one?
No, I will 100% be rolling out a Huntley DFS roster this week, like 100%. I think you're going to see a lot of the read option kind of stuff, and those read option swing passes to Hill and Waddle. No, I mean, I think generally speaking, we sort of have an idea of what's going on in the Titans backfield now. Spears is getting a little bit of receiving work, a little bit of run, but they clearly prefer Pollard. So moving forward, Spears is a premium handcuff, right? He'd be good if Pollard went down, but it's Pollard. And Pollard's inching with that level of usage. He didn't do that well last week, but with that level of usage, he's inching toward like a weekly flex level player. And then Hopkins and Ridley, they're going to duke it out a little bit. We're going to see who comes out on top. Hopkins ran way less routes last week, far fewer routes last week, and saw way more work. So, and Levis clearly likes Hopkins. I mean, he threw the hell out of the ball to him last year. So we'll just keep an eye on it. I think we'll learn a lot in the coming weeks. And then for the A-Chain fade, we'll see. I am trying to sell A-Chain right now. I think you're correct about that. I just don't know. I don't know. The fantasy community views him as a top 5 asset. Maybe I would just rather take on a less risky asset.
I'm going against an A-Chain roster this week, and I could not be more excited because it's one of those ones that, like, I think people are going to be on, and then they're going to be like, oh, what happened? And it's like, to me, that's the most obvious. It's the most obvious fate of all time, but we'll see. I could look like an idiot if, like, A-Chain has, like, a 30-point game. Here, I could look like an absolute moron, but I'm standing on business here. I really mean what I say when with that prognostication. We'll see if it comes to fruition.
Okay, last game of the week. A lot on the line as far as just me and Ted trashing each other's opinions about football here. Seahawks at the Lions. Seahawks implied total 21.5. Lions implied total 25. For the Seahawks, I think if you picked up Geno off waivers or as your QB2 in the draft, you probably feel pretty good. He's passing the ball a lot. He's been spreading it out. He's been taking his downfield shots. He's looked good. I mean, not amazing, but he's looked good. He looks really comfortable in that system. And DK is the one who appears to be the biggest beneficiary of it. I saw an interesting comparison. I wish I could remember. Maybe it was Jacob Gibbs on Twitter who sent it out. But really interesting looking at DK's trajectory at this point in his career with A.J. Brown's trajectory at this point in his career, and they do actually sort of line up. I didn't feel great. I took some like 3rd-round shares of DK this year. And that really was a blind faith move. He'd really been more of like a middling wide receiver too the last 2 years. But because they used him so weird, it was really, really weird the way he was deployed the last 2 years. I mean, took some shots on him, and it didn't feel good at the time. I feel great now. I think you feel great if you're a DK owner this year. And especially in this game, where they're going to have a great game script against a bad secondary indoors. Should have a really good week. That will probably be someone in my DFS rosters. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, another one. I expect JSN quietly. He is eating up Lockett's snaps. I know Lockett had the big first week. I know Lockett had a better week last week, and JSN with the big week in between. JSN's the one to own there. It is just a matter of time. This is going to be his role on the offense, and this week is the week you roll him out. We have Walker here as a start. He hasn't practiced in 2 weeks, but he didn't go on IR, which means it's either this week or next week he's coming back. This is a really important game. Really important for playoff seeding. Really important. I'm sure the Seahawks consider themselves contenders for home field advantage throughout the playoffs, whether you do or don't. Yeah. I'm sure they think they are. So it would seem like they might rush Walker back, but Sharps has also looked totally comparable in there. Whoever is starting for him at running back, you're going to start. Sharps is a must start without Walker in there. He's proven that at this point. We're sitting Lockett and tricky decision Fant. Fant saw enough work last week, and the game script should be right. That I don't hate him as a streamer this week. If you have some injury or something, you need to throw someone in there. For the Lions, Amon-Ra, Gibbs, Monty, J-Mo. It's a good attackable matchup. I know the Seahawks secondary is good. I know their head coach, their defensive coordinator is really, really good. Their system's really good, but they're going to need to pass the ball. The Seahawks do score points. They do have a good enough offense, and the Lions have a bad enough defense. You want them all. Our tricky decisions, our sort of tricky decisions here that are weird. Goff, he went in that range of quarterbacks like where Purdy went and Trevor Lawrence went. And a lot of Goff rosters almost certainly have a second quarterback rostered with them. Goff just hasn't gotten it together this year. He's been really unlucky with how the touchdowns shook out, but they clearly will run the ball until you can't stop them. And the Seahawks, they're runnable, onable. So I don't know if Goff is the best start this week. Coming off his 20-point game last week, I'd probably be rolling Fields over Goff. That's kind of the guy we've been using. Darnold, I think I prefer Goff, but by a hair. I don't blame someone who starts Darnold over him, but I think I'd rather start Goff. Baker Mayfield at Philly, I think I'd be starting Baker all day on there. Brock Purdy, I have a roster with Goff and Purdy. Brock Purdy against New England, I'm starting Brock. So it's just about what options you have, but in that tier, I would look to pivot off him if you can. I would actually prefer Geno starting in this game. And then this one, a little bit more of a Ted call. Let him get into it. He's calling Laporta a tricky decision. I think he's just salty that he took Laporta round 4 in the league win together. I don't blame him. But, how many rosters are you seriously benching Laporta?
Not off Laporta at all. Like I'm being patient with him, right? Like it's just kind of been, it's been weird. I think that Goff has kind of played like the quarterback that he probably is the first couple of weeks of the season, which kind of means as a result, right? Like it just hasn't been as good for the fantasy guys. The reason I have him as a tricky decision is the ankle. The ankle. Like so he got rolled up on the hook and ladder play against the Cardinals last week. He came back out for 3 more snaps, so he got carted off into the locker room. So I was kind of on, oh boy, did he break his ankle watch. He came back, he played 3 snaps in the second half, and then was off the field the rest of the game. Fantasy doctors have assured us Laporta owners that it is just a low ankle sprain, mild, and shouldn't be that worried about. My only concern is that so far he has not been a focal point of the offense. JMO has kind of been taking his volume in that regard. And, with the injury too, I don't know how much more involved he'll be, right? Like if he was already kind of not getting involved in the offense before the ankle, especially a week after you sprain it, I don't know. There's just to kind of put into perspective where I'm at with it. To me, Hunter Henry and Sam Laporta is a legitimate toss-up for this week only. For this week only, not saying rest of season, but for this week only, I think there is an argument to start Hunter Henry. I'm not saying it's for sure smart. I'm not sure if I'm for sure doing it. I'm just saying it's on the table. That's why I wanted to put him as tricky decision. Um, then for the Seahawks, I got nothing to say. There will be more on that in the gambling show. There's going to be a sizable bet coming out this week. Heady Ted bet coming on this game. I think this is going to be a very attackable one. Um, but at any rate, that's going to do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. We are coming up on bye weeks. Bye weeks start next week, and the videos will get a little bit shorter and probably easier to digest. And then, Yanni, you can come up with the question of the day. I'm burnt.
Question of the day: Are the Seahawks a good football team? I'd like to
Perfect.
know: Are the Seahawks a good football team? Let us.
Perfect. My answer to that question is they're fucking pretenders, but we'll see. Anyways, we will catch you guys on Friday for the gambling episode.